Not all of us live in Paris, New York, or Tokyo. Compared to those places, our surroundings might appear boring. It might actually be boring, or it could be that you're just too used to your surroundings. Either way, I'm here to give you ideas on how to photograph your boring place to make it a bit more interesting. First tip is take hints. When I feel like my surroundings are boring, what I like to do is search photographers from overseas who photographed my area or country. By seeing how a person who is new to my city views it, I can get hints on what might be interesting to a newcomer. You get to see your own world through a set of fresh new eyes. Through their photos, suddenly even the buses and local markets and its colors can seem very interesting. For example, I live in outer parts of Seoul, South Korea. I am so used to this place that nothing looks photogenic anymore. But there is this photographer that you may know named Timu. He's on YouTube and Instagram. He is from Finland but lived in Seoul for some time. He usually photographed night scenes of Seoul, and through his work, I saw the potential in my own city on how cinematic and photogenic it could look. And I'm pretty sure you guys know who Roman Fox is. He visited Korea a few months ago, and through his photos, I got to see what looks interesting and photogenic to a traveler. And I also got hints on how to use colors. I now see the vibrant colors of my neighborhood in Seoul and see my surroundings as more photogenic than before. Remember that someone halfway across the world has no idea what your ordinary or boring looks like. Photography isn't about how exotic your subject is, it's about how you see it. But then now that I think about it, your subject is very exotic to someone living in a different country. Spend good time searching for photographers who shot in your area, and save a few photos that inspire you. Use these as a reference on your next photo walk. But if your city or area has no visits from other photographers because it is actually a boring area very far away from any cities, then you can research a place that somewhat resembles your boring place. If you search hard enough, whether it's one of the great photographers or photographers on YouTube or Instagram, you will see that there are people who photograph what you would call a boring place. But they somehow make that place much more interesting with their composition, use of colors, and their unique perspectives. You could even watch vlogs made in your area. How they take videos of your boring place can give you hints on what looks great to a newcomer. This is one of the best ways to see your own city, through an outsider's view. Next is follow light and shadows. Even in a boring place, you can use light around you to create drama. Even if it's a boring place but the light is interesting, you'll be amazed at how much depth and emotion that can add to your photo. Look for areas where light hits at an angle or creates contrast. Shadows, backlighting, and harsh sunlight can all help in creating an interesting photo. Early morning or late afternoon sunlight can stretch long shadows, casting them in interesting directions. Even midday harsh sunlight, which gets a bad rap, has advantages because light and shadow can dramatically light down on a narrow alleyway in a photogenic way. What I do when I see interesting light in my surroundings is check the time. Then, I return to that same spot around the same time to take photos. Some of my favorite boring spot shots were created this way. Shoot at different times of day. The same place can have a completely different vibe in midday, golden hour, and blue hour. Chasing light can work at nighttime too. After the sun has gone down, street lights and neon signs can give a completely new vibe. Even a car headlight shining on a person crosswalking can give an interesting visual too. So go out at nighttime to photograph your boring place. If you don't have those night lights available, try long exposures in pitch darkness. It can create an eerie vibe to an otherwise a plain setting. This is a film photo taken at night in pitch darkness for 30 minutes. I feel that it has an atmosphere that you can't quite put into words. I was really happy with this shot. Next is switch up your lens. Our choice of lens can completely change how a place looks and feels. If you're used to shooting with a normal focal length, try switching things up. A wide-angle lens can exaggerate perspective for a dramatic feeling. You can play with the distortion that wide-angle lens creates to give a different look to your ordinary surroundings. A telephoto lens, on the other hand, compresses the scene, bringing faraway elements closer to give a more intimate and layered look. Maybe if your boring place only has a few people around, it will be easier to incorporate them in your frame with a longer lens. Even if your boring place has no people around, bringing a faraway subject closer with a longer lens could make a stronger photo opposed to the same composition with a normal focal length. Another benefit of a longer lens is that it gets you to shoot in tighter frames. So naturally, you have more options on how to shoot the same thing in different ways, opposed to wider focal lengths, which can have everything in their frame. So naturally, it would have less ways to shoot the same subject. And sometimes, telephoto lens is so zoomed in, it can add abstract qualities to your images. So try shooting things a bit more close up for a detailed shot. If you photograph your boring place with a normal lens like 35 or 50, you're making it much more difficult for yourself. So go with a lens that is wider than 24 or longer than 85. It gives a whole new perspective to your boring place. Next is use foreground element. This appears in almost all my videos where I share tips and tricks because it is my favorite thing to do. And it is easy and very effective in making visual interest in your photos. A lot of times, a location might feel flat and boring because we're looking at it with no layers or depth. These photos only have a midground and background with no clear foreground. If you use objects in the foreground like a tree branch, a fence, or even another human being, you can instantly create depth. If you don't have those things available, bringing your camera close to the ground surface will work too. This layering helps guide the viewer's eye and creates a sense of space and makes the shot look more interesting. And most of the time, I think it is better to have your foreground very close to you to have it a bit blurry than having it a bit far away to have it in focus, so keep that in mind. But of course, this changes for every situation. You might want to let the viewers know what your foreground is. In this case, close down your lens or stand just a bit further away so you can make out what the foreground is. Next is learn how to edit. Whether it's the very saturated colors or muted colors, if you do it right, you can make the most mundane place pop in your photos. Have you ever watched a camera or lens review video where they compare the sharpness and thought something was missing in their photos? Well, the thing that is missing is post-editing. The photo feels too raw and without character if it is unedited. After watching this video, I really urge you to go and watch lots of photo editing tutorials. You'd be surprised at how their raw files look somewhat dull, but they really bring it to life by editing it really well. But you should keep in mind that editing is not only about brightening the shadows and bringing down the highlights to show all the details in them. I see this mistake a lot. If you do this, you end up with a very flat image where everything has similar brightness. Many times, editing is about creating mood that fits the scene. Through editing, you create mood. So sometimes you might want those highlights to be blown out, or you might want your shadows really dark without obvious details in them. Each photo has a different mood, so edit accordingly. I got 4 more short tips before I end the video. First is try minimalist photography. What is boring is usually a synonym for there aren't many stuff here. So that could mean there's a chance for minimalist photography. Maybe invest in an ND filter and try long exposure shot on a tripod to create a minimalist photo. Also, look for clean lines, symmetry, or negative space. Highlight the emptiness or simplicity in your location. Cloudy days have white sky, which could make great negative space for a minimalistic photo. Or clear blue sky can have a similar effect too. A lone tree in an empty field or a single streetlight can be powerful too if framed well. If there aren't many people around, just having one tiny person in your frame can give a minimalistic look to your photos as well. Next is get creative. Try handheld slow shutter speed, or you could try shooting with a special film like Lomography Purple or Cinestill 800T to add some spice to your photos. You could also try autofocus or blurry shots, or try multiple exposure. This is not supported by most cameras, but if you learn Photoshop, you could try making multiple exposure shots in post-editing. And look for reflection shots. It always adds an interesting dynamic to your images. Next is add human element. This could add storytelling element or visual interest, or it could breathe new life into your photos. because that person will never be at the same place with the same gesture ever again. You do not need to capture their face to incorporate human element. It can just be hints at their existence, their belongings, or just body parts in your frame. The final short tip is use different perspectives. One of the biggest reasons why a place can feel boring to photograph is that we're looking at them from the same eye level perspective every time. So try crouching down and shooting from the ground up, or look for a higher vantage point to get a broader view of the scene. Moving your point of view can give a scene a completely different feel. So this is all I have for today. I hope this was helpful and made you want to go out and shoot your boring surroundings. I once read a comment on this kind of video which said, there are no dull places, only dull moments. So be patient and try to photograph a more interesting moment in your boring place. That could mean a human element or time of day when the light hits your subject in a certain way. And I'm curious, if you clicked on this video, you might be thinking that your city or town is boring. So which city or town do you live in? What do you see as the most difficult challenge to photograph your area in a photogenic way? Did you find a method to overcome it? Please let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps out my channel by pushing my content out to more viewers. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.